This is a CBS News special report. I'm Charlie Rose with Nora O'Donnell and Gail King in New York. The first indictments from special counsel Robert Mueller's investigation have just been revealed. President Trump's former campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, is expected to surrender to authorities. He just left his Alexandria house with his lawyer.
Jeff Pegues is in Washington with new information on the charges. Jeff, good morning.
Well, good morning. And this is, as we suspected, really, that someone would be turning themselves in this morning, and it's happening. It seems to be Paul Manafort, who has now connected with his attorney, Kevin Downing. And we suspect that they are heading to the Washington field office of the FBI here in Washington, D.C. And as I reported at 7, this would signal a new phase in this investigation, the Russia investigation, as someone of the ilk of Paul Manafort, who was the campaign chairman of the Trump campaign, surrendering to investigators. This is an investigation that has been ongoing for the last, well, it's been over a year. Really, it began in 2016. But the first new phase of this began when Bob Mueller, Robert Mueller, the former FBI director, became the special counsel investigating these Russia connection allegations aimed at the Trump campaign. And so with Paul Manafort expected to surrender this morning, as I said, this begins a new phase in this investigation.
Know what he's being charged with?
Well, we don't know that yet. We're going to have to wait to see. But once we know, we'll get the charging documents, which will outline what investigators are alleging thus far against Paul Manafort. So once we see those charging documents, you get a better sense of what the special counsel believes may have been partly at the root of the allegations against Paul Manafort. So, you know, the answer to that question, Gail, is it's too early to tell for sure what exactly he will be charged with. We know that he is surrendering this morning.
All right, Jeff Pegues, thank you very much. Paula Reeves at the federal courthouse in Washington. Anyone arrested today would be brought there to be arraigned. Paula, good morning.
Good morning. Sources tell me that Paul Manafort is expected to come here to federal court in Washington to face the first charges in the special counsel's probe. Now we know sources have confirmed that many of the witnesses that have come before the grand jury have been related to Paul Manafort and his business dealings. We know that the grand jury is currently looking into possible tax violations, possible money laundering, and also failure to disclose certain lobbying efforts by Mr. Manafort. So while we don't know yet what specifically he has been charged with, based on what we know has come before the grand jury, it appears that he will be charged with something related to his business dealings.
So, Paula, when will we find out what the charges are and whether there will be additional charges?
The courthouse here opens at 9 a.m. That's when the clerk's office will open. They're the ones who really do unseal the indictment. So unless the special counsel's office makes this public prior to that, we would expect sometime in the next hour these would be unsealed, and Manafort could make his initial appearance before a judge after he's processed on these charges.
Does this latest development tell us, Paula, anything about where this investigation is heading, the fact that Paul Manafort has been asked to appear in court this morning?
It just shows how aggressive a special counsel Mueller is being in this investigation. Sometimes these kinds of special counsel probes, they slowly prod along. But here he's been very aggressive. He's been moving very swiftly to move witnesses in front of the grand jury, sometimes even before his prosecutors have had a chance to pre-interview them. We also know that over the summer in July, he used a no-knock warrant on Paul Manafort. And some sources tell me that was pretty aggressive because a lot of the documents and other physical evidence that they obtained probably could have been obtained through his lawyers by just asking. So it shows clearly special counsel here, he's trying to make a statement. He's moving quickly, publicly, and aggressively.
Do we expect it?
Paula, there has been some detailed and very good reporting out there about what Paul Manafort and his business partner, Rick Gates, and their connections to businesses in Eastern Europe. Can you detail some of those?
Exactly. So one of the subject of the federal grand jury investigation is that perhaps Mr. Manafort did not fully disclose the extent of his lobbying efforts on behalf of the government of Ukraine. Now, of course, the government he was lobbying for had close ties to Russia. So there are some concerns about why he did not disclose this more fully to the Trump campaign, but also you have requirements to disclose this to the Justice Department and to the federal government. And in an investigation like this, you start with sort of the low-hanging fruit, if you will. You start with the easy targets, and that doesn't mean you're not a high-profile high-profile person. It just means maybe you did something that it would be easy for prosecutors to charge. And if you can charge someone on a low level, a tax offense, failure to disclose your lobbying efforts, sort of a paperwork offense, perhaps you can get that person to be more cooperative as you go after more high-profile targets on more significant charges.
All right.
Just one question. Do you expect there to be other charges against anyone else today?
I do not. So far, based on what my sources have told me over this weekend, it was expected that it would probably only be one person. We're now hearing it could be two. But again, it's both are connected to Manafort. Repeatedly, sources told me, look, if you want to know who's going to be charged and what they're going to be charged with, look who's gone before the federal grand jury so far. And we know that has predominantly been Paul Manafort's business associates, and the documents and other physical evidence have all been tied to him. So at this point, I have no expectation of anyone else being charged beyond Mr. Manafort and potentially his associate.
All right, Paula, thank you. Our chief legal correspondent, Jan Crawford, is also in Washington. Jan, just going further than what Paula was reporting, I mean, the New York Times reported in July 2017 that Manafort was in debt to pro-Russian interests by as much as $17 million. We see Paul Manafort right now with his attorney walking into FBI headquarters, surrendering himself, if you will, to the FBI. What do you know about the heart of some of the allegations against him?
Well, I mean, that is a hugely important point. And following up on Paula's excellent reporting where she kind of outlined some of the things that they've been looking at with Manafort, I mean, the one thing that jumps out is you didn't hear anything about collusion and the Trump campaign. So remember, Robert Mueller has wide-ranging authority to investigate a lot of different things. So, you know, this could just be kind of the tip of the iceberg, something unrelated to collusion or Russia or the campaign at this point. I mean, the question is, though, now, obviously, Manafort hasn't been cooperating up until this point. Prosecutors typically don't indict people who are cooperating. But what if he changes his mind? Perhaps he provides more information, which could then put pressure on other witnesses. It's a way of kind of springing open this investigation into other areas.
Jan, we saw him just arriving. Can you walk us through the process? What happens now?
Well, I mean, he's turning himself in now. This is obviously a hugely significant day for Paul Manafort, and certainly not something that, you know, I'm sure he saw coming when he agreed to take on that high position in the Trump campaign. And so what we're going to see now is, presumably later in the day, this indictment, we will see some of the charges, and that's going to be also very important because that will show us, as Paula had suggested, what they're looking at this point with Mr. Manafort and what some of the charges that the special counsel has pursued and is now saying that he believes a crime has been committed by Paul Manafort that they can prove beyond a reasonable doubt in court. So when we see what those charges are, that's going to give us a lot more information about where this investigation may be going or what the special counsel is looking at right now with regards to him.
Thank you so much, Jan. Let's go back to Jeff Pegues, who has new information on one of Paul Manafort's business associates. Jeff?
Yeah, Charlie, so we're hearing that there could be someone else surrendering today. We're looking into that. We're trying to confirm that. But what I can tell you about Paul Manafort is, you know, again, we don't know what these charges are going to be. We should find out in the next couple of hours. But what we know is that he is key to this Russia investigation. I say that because of when he joined the Trump campaign. He joined the Trump campaign as a volunteer in March of 2016, and then in April and May of 2016, he started rising to the top of the Trump campaign and eventually became the campaign chairman until August. Now, that's important because not only have investigators really been scrutinizing his contacts with Russian billionaires, these oligarchs who have close ties to Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin. So investigators have been looking into that. They've been looking into his liabilities to these Russian billionaires. And part of that involves some of the activity taking place over the summer while he was campaign chairman. There have been reports, and we have reported, that he agreed to brief Oleg Deripaska, who was a well-known Russian oligarch, while he was campaign chairman. We don't know if Deripaska ever took him up on that offer, but there is an email chain that shows that there were there was this desire to brief and to keep Deripaska informed. And then there was this activity around the convention in Cleveland and the changes to the platform on Ukraine, the GOP platform. Paul Manafort was at the heart of that. So was one of his associates, Rick Gates. And so investigators have been scrutinizing all this activity from the time that Manafort joined the campaign in March as a volunteer and the time until he left the campaign in August.
All right, Jeff, thank you very much. We expect more developments, of course, throughout the day. We'll bring you the details as soon as they emerge.
Coverage continues on your local news and all day on our 24-hour streaming network, CBSN. And we'll have a complete wrap-up tonight on the CBS Evening News.
Many of you would return now to CBS This Morning. This has been a CBS News special report. I'm Charlie Rose with Gayle King and Norah O'Donnell, CBS News, New York.
For news 24 hours a day, go to CBSNews.com.